Hi boys and girls, this is Miss Simpson here and welcome to our next video of our Read Aloud series where we are reading Magic Treehouse Twister on Tuesday by Mary Pope Osborne. I hope you have been enjoying this book with us so far. We are almost at the end. So today we're going to be finishing the last two chapters of our story. But before we do that, we have to go back. We're going to do a little recap on what's happened so far, kind of help us get our memory back of the story so far and help us so that we can get ready for the next part of the adventure. So far in the book, we know that Jack and Annie traveled back in time. We know that they went back to the prairie where they found a schoolhouse. They went to the schoolhouse, and at the schoolhouse, they found their writing sample that they needed for Morgan. So if we remember, they wrote down that writing on a chalkboard, which they then were going to bring back to the treehouse, but a twister came. So they went back to the schoolhouse so that they could try and help and save the school children and the teacher, Miss Neely. So where we left off, the twister had come through the prairie and they were hiding in the cellar. So we're going to see what happens next and how they end our series of our book with the last two chapters. So we're going to go ahead and get started with chapter 9, which is called All Clear. Jeb pushed open the cellar door. Daylight streamed in. He looked out. All clear, he said. Jeb crawled out of the cellar. Jack followed. Him, then Annie, Will, Kate, and Miss Neely. The sky was gray above them. The twister had torn the roof off of the dugout and sucked everything out, even the rug. They all stared in shock at the empty space. Then Miss Neely smiled. Well, at least we're all safe, she said, and they stepped out of the hut. The air was thick with dust and bits of grass. The twister had cut a wide path of dirt and destruction across the prairie. It was still whirling away in the horizon. Everyone watched silently as the twister became long and thin like a piece of rope, and then it vanished completely. Miss Neely turned to Jack and Annie. You saved our lives, she said. Thank you, said Will. Thank you, said Kate, hugging Annie. Jeb actually opened the cellar door, said Jack. Yes, thank you too, Jeb, said Miss Neely. The older boy only scowled. I hope you can get a new school, said Annie. We will, said Miss Neely. Just as we planted our fields again after the grasshopper attack, we'll build our school again after the twister. At first, if you don't succeed, try again. Jack thought Miss Neely was one of the bravest people he'd ever met. You're a good teacher, he said shyly. I love teaching, she said. It's a job that lasts forever. Whatever you teach children today travels with them far into the future. That's true, said Annie. Jack smiled. Well, we better leave. Again, he said. Bye. Everyone waved, except Jeb. Jack and Annie started across the prairie back towards the treehouse. They hadn't gotten far when Jack heard someone shout his name. He turned around. It was Jeb. Wait, the older boy yelled. He had a fierce look on his face. He started running towards them. Oh no, Jack breathed. Did Jeb still want to fight? Leave us alone, Annie said angrily. Shh, Annie, said Jack. Let's see what he wants. When Jeb got close to them, he stopped and he looked right at Jack. Why did you come back? He asked. We wanted to tell you about the storm cellar, said Jack. How did you know about that cellar? Jeb said. Jack pulled the research book out of his leather bag. We read about it in this book, he said. Jeb stared at the book, and then he sighed. I aim to read someday too, he said. That looks like a good book. Jack didn't know what to say. He was still afraid of making Jeb mad, so he just nodded. My ma and pa were too poor to go to school, said Jeb. They want me to go, but I'm getting started mighty late. It's not too late, said Jack. It's never too late, said Annie. Jeb narrowed his eyes. If you ever come back here, he said. Yes? Jack asked carefully. Was Jeb about to threaten him again? Maybe I'll be able to read that book of yours, Jeb said. Jack sighed and smiled. I know you will, he said. Jeb smiled back. He had a nice smile. Thanks for coming back to rescue us, he said to both Jack and Annie. Too bad you can't stay. I reckon we'd all be good friends if you did. I reckon we would, said Annie. Jeb nodded. Then he turned and ran back to join the others. Suddenly, the sun broke through the clouds and the wildflowers danced in a gentle breeze. Ready? Said Annie. Jack just stood there, staring at the sunlit prairie. Jack? Ready to go? Annie asked. In that moment, Jack actually hated to leave, but he nodded slowly and said, Let's go. He and Annie took off through the bright, sparkling grass. They ran to the small grove of trees near the creek. They climbed up the rope ladder and scrambled into the treehouse. Annie picked up their Pennsylvania book. I wish we could go there, she said. This time, the wind did not start to blow. The treehouse simply started to spin on its own. It spun faster and faster, and then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 10, The Third Writing. Jack opened his eyes. Morning light filled the treehouse. He and Annie were wearing their own clothes again. Home, said Annie, smiling. Jack looked out the window. He saw their nice, cozy house in the distance, their lawn, their sidewalk, their paved street. Life here is pretty easy compared to pioneer life, said Jack. We're lucky, said Annie. Jack reached into his bag and pulled out a small slate. Our third writing, he said. He added the poem to the list from the Civil War and the letter from the Revolutionary War. You did just what the poem says you should do, said Annie. What do you mean? Jack asked. If at first you don't succeed, try again, Annie said. You kept trying to make friends with Jeb. In the end, you did. I guess you're right, said Jack. We have to get only one more special writing for Morgan's library, said Annie. I wonder how that will help save Camelot, said Jack. Annie shrugged. It's a mystery, she said. She and Jack looked around the treehouse. Look, Annie picked up a piece of paper lying in the corner. She read aloud, Come back early Wednesday morning. Wednesday? Ma'am, that's tomorrow, said Jack. So, said Annie. She started down the rope ladder. Not much time to recover, said Jack, pulling on his backpack. Recover from what? Annie said. The twister, said Jack. Oh yeah, I'd almost forgotten about that, said Annie. Jack smiled. Actually, the nightmare of the twister was fading from his memory too. We must try to hold on to the good memories, Miss Neely had said, and let go of the bad ones. The kindness of Will and Kate making friends with Jeb, the courage of Miss Neely, these memories, Jack thought, he would never forget. That is the end of Twister on Tuesday. But before we stop, there's a couple more facts about twisters that I want to read to you guys. Twisters, so first fact, twisters or tornadoes are the fastest winds on Earth. Second fact, Twisters can travel at speeds up to 200 miles per hour. That's really fast. Third fact, the spinning winds act like a giant vacuum cleaner as they move across the earth. Wow. Fourth fact, almost 1,000 tornadoes hit the United States every year. Wow. I did not know there were that many tornadoes that hit the U.S. every single year. That's incredible. So I hope that you boys and girls enjoyed our story, Twister on Tuesday, by Mary Pope Osborne. And I hope you enjoyed watching our videos with us and answering the questions and following along as we read through our story. So next time that you guys join us, we're going to be starting a new story. This one's going to be a little bit longer, and it's called The BFG by Roald Dahl. That's going to be our story for our next set of videos, and I hope that you join us and that you enjoy that story just as much as I enjoy reading it to you. Have a great day, boys and girls.